Hey now, our number 3 of the line, Talk 99.5. Talk995.com, 750,000 plus without power after the mammoth winter storm. Boy, look at the shots in Boston, man. They got hammered, didn't they? Cars are all buried on the side of the street. And it's not like it's going to warm up there at all. You know, you ain't got a choice but to shovel. And when's the last time y'all have shoveled snow? Have you ever shoveled snow?
I don't think I've ever shoveled snow.
I don't either. I mean, if it snows here, we just sit around and hang out until it melts.
Right. Usually melts the next day.
Yeah. So
It does not look fun. I know that.
no, it doesn't. Everybody would enjoy a snow day. All right, I get that, especially if you got kids. It would be fun, but one snow day maybe, and all of it's melted by the next morning. I remember the blizzard of '93. I was young. Was it '93?
It was 93.
I feel like what was it? What was the blizzard before that? There was one before that.
There was an ice storm in 83, I think, 82.
Well,
I don't remember a big blizzard, though.
I remember, and maybe this was, I don't know, maybe it was '93. I just remember like there being 4 and 5 foot of snow, and my dad taking me outside and picking me up and throwing me in a giant pile of snow, and I just sank to the bottom.
See, that's fun, snow.
Yeah. But this stuff?
No.
Mm-mm. Yeah, I remember, and we were camped out. I mean, that '93 blizzard, how long did that last? How old were you in '93?
In 93, I was 20.
So you remember it pretty well.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
How long did that last? Do you remember?
I want to say 3 days.
3 or 4 days?
Yeah. It started, 3 days.
Because I remember being at my grandma's house, and I don't think we had any power. They were taking all the, stuff from the fridge and putting it outside in the snow.
Right. It had been my first college spring break, and we couldn't leave the city. I do remember that.
Boy, that's bad timing.
Yeah.
Where'd you go to college?
UAB.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I think I knew that.
University of Alabama at Birmingham.
Did you party hard while you were in college?
I did. Pretty much.
Mm.
For half of it, anyway, till
you failed and got kicked out?
Until I realized that I needed to do something quick.
You quit college and started in radio?
No, I never quit. I graduated.
Has it ever been required to have a college degree to get in radio?
I don't think so. I think it's one of the few professions you don't necessarily have to have one.
You just tell them, hey, I went to school, but don't tell them how it finished up.
Well, I mean, I think it's all about talent, maybe. You can have a college degree, but have no talent for radio.
That's true. I've seen a lot of those. I mean, I see people in radio now that don't have talent.
Right.
I'm not going to name any names, but there's people out there across the country that I'm kind of like, you're really not that good. Not to be judgy, but I mean, some people are just kind of.
And there's, everybody has their own definition of good. Some people think that certain talent is not good, and other people think that same talent is good. So,
well, yeah, and we have both of those groups.
I think we do.
Show.
I think we do.
Mm-hmm. Justin says, I grew up in Maine and central New York. I used to have to shovel the mailbox out. That's a lot of snow if you got to shovel your mailbox out of the snow.
Yeah, that's, 4 feet?
Casey says, lived in Pennsylvania 25 years. I have shoveled so many times. It was my winter workout. We use snow blowers up there. I could get behind a snow blower. because it's kind of like you know, it's it's like a
There's so many jokes there.
it's kind of like a tiller or something, right? You know, like
Tiller?
you're tilling your garden.
Yeah.
You know, you're just tilling the sand, right?
Yeah, basically.
I don't know. I don't even know how that works. Does it just suck the snow up
Yeah,
in there
I
and
think so. It just sucks
blow it
and-
out the side?
Sucks it and blows it.
Just sucks it and blows it,
Yeah, that's what they snow blowers.
which is an act as old as time. Sucking and blowing.
Yeah.
Been around for many years. And then there was this right here. So in Nashville, there was a truck that jackknifed and hit the what would you call that? The signage that is over the interstate
the
that tells you,
interstates, interstate signs
yeah,
giving directions.
that goes over the actual road. You know,
Yeah.
it's got the big pillars and whatever you call it, or the scaffolding. And an 18-wheeler apparently jackknifed and took that whole thing down, which would then cause the entire interstate to be shut down. But seems like nobody should have been driving on the interstates anyway.
Yeah, I mean, you cannot drive in ice. I don't care how good of a driver you are.
Mm-mm.
You just can't do it. Snow, yes. Ice, no.
We're just not built for it down here. That's the bottom line. So, Craig says Frosty says he'd like to have his snow blown.
Well, I
You can
mean,
always count on this audience.
you got to get snow first, I think, right?
Yeah,
You can't blow what's not there.
that's true. That is very true. So we got a White House press briefing coming up. Be interested to see how. Tell me this, Carrie. Your takeaway on what you saw, and I'm sure you've seen the videos and everything else. Your takeaway from what happened in Minneapolis over the weekend.
I mean, I hate that the guy died, of course, but you can't. I mean, you shouldn't put yourself in that situation. I mean, protest, yes, but yes, you can have a gun, but don't bring it out in front of federal agents who have guns.
Right.
I don't care what. Don't go. I'm just giving it up. You have a gun. I'm assuming more information is going to come out, but I mean, it's the perfect storm for people in Minnesota. They're going to try to use it and abuse it.
Most people know from all walks of life, no matter where you live, whether you live, in Alabama or you live in Mountain Brook or the Hood or California or New York. Most people know that when interacting with law enforcement, there's certain ways to conduct yourself, right? Such as if you get pulled over, put your hands on the wheel, right?
Yeah, most of the time, correct.
Put the car in park, put your hands on the wheel. Don't reach for anything until the officer asks you to reach for them. And one of the first things you should say to the officer is, I have a legally obtained firearm in my car, and it is here. It is under my seat. It's in the console, or it's on my side. That's the first thing you do. Now, why do you do those things? Why do you do it? Just because you want to brag to the officer that you got a gun? No. You do it because you are trying to keep yourself safe. You're also trying to assure the officer that you are not an individual that's looking to blast him, right? And so we conduct ourselves in certain ways in the presence of law enforcement, especially if we have a firearm. No matter what the conversation was with Alex Pretty and the ICE officer on the front end of that, once the tussle started and once he started to resist arrest, because there was no doubt on the video, no matter what anybody says, that he is struggling with officers who are trying to arrest him for interfering with ICE operations. That's one of the biggest no-nos out there. And again, I'm not going to say it over and over, but it is baseline a tragedy in itself. There's a tragedy that Renee Nicole Good died. It's a tragedy that this guy died. But he put himself in a situation that ultimately caused this to happen. You've got multiple agents tussling with a guy who's got a gun, and any small movement that happens could result in, just like you saw, an agent yelling gun, whether the gun is there or not. Even if the gun has been taken off his person seconds earlier, there's still 5 other officers there that assume that you have a gun on you, and you're still tussling with them. Once they're notified by any of the officers of, hey, there's a gun, or it looks like he's pulling it, because he did end up having his hand down to his side. And from the looks of it, he didn't even know his gun had been pulled because, again, it happened so fast. Officers have to protect themselves. Police and federal officials do not have time. They cannot afford to wait until they're staring down the barrel of a gun to make a decision. They're not afforded that.
What was the first thing they said? He was a licensed carrier. Legally. Well, yeah, you can legally carry a gun, but you can't legally pull it out.
Yeah.
I mean...
And tussle while you're tussling with police.
No, not a good idea.
And even... Now, Alex Pretty's family put out a statement, and they said... let's find their statement. They said, "We are heartbroken, but also very angry. Alex was a kind-hearted soul who cared deeply for his family and his friends, and also the American veterans whom he cared for as an ICU nurse at the Minneapolis VA hospital. Alex wanted to make a difference in this world. Unfortunately, he will not be with us to see his impact. I do not throw around the hero term lightly. However, his last thought and act was to protect a woman." Okay. "The sickening lies told about our son by the administration are reprehensible and disgusting. Alex is clearly not holding a gun when attacked by Trump's murdering and cowardly ICE thugs. He has his phone in his right hand, and his empty left hand is raised above his head while trying to protect the woman ICE just pushed down, all while being pepper sprayed. Please get the truth out about our son. He was a good man. Thank you." That statement came out, but before that statement came out, they made a different statement, which was they told the Associated Press that they had urged him not to do anything stupid while protesting. That was their statement before they probably got a call from Ben Crump and then put out a blistering statement about the Trump administration and the murdering ICE thugs. Caroline Levitt at the podium. Let's go to it live.
24 hours for the states of Arkansas, Georgia, Indiana, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia, and West Virginia, enabling these states to access critical federal resources to supplement their response efforts if needed. These declarations will help state-led efforts of turning power back on, clearing roads for emergency services, and keeping communities safe. The White House will continue to correspond directly with governors and local officials in the coming days, especially in those states that were harshly impacted by this storm. I would also like to address the chaotic scenes in Minnesota over the weekend. Nobody in the White House, including President Trump, wants to see people getting hurt or killed in America's streets. This includes Renee Good, Alex Pretty, the brave men and women of federal law enforcement, and the many Americans who have been victimized at the hands of illegal alien criminals. Saturday's shooting remains under active investigation by Homeland Security Investigations and the FBI. The Customs and Border Protection is also conducting their own internal review. As President Trump said yesterday, the administration is reviewing everything with respect to the shooting, and we will let that investigation play out. But let's be clear about the circumstances which led to that moment on Saturday. This tragedy occurred as a result of a deliberate and hostile resistance by Democrat leaders in Minnesota. For weeks, Governor Walz and the Mayor Jacob Frey and other elected Democrats were spreading lies about federal law enforcement officers who are risking their lives daily to remove the worst criminal illegal aliens from our streets: murderers, rapists, pedophiles, human traffickers, and gang members. Governor Walz and Mayor Frey have shamefully blocked local and state police from cooperating with ICE, actively inhibiting efforts to arrest violent criminals. They have also used their platforms to encourage left-wing agitators to stalk, record, confront, and obstruct federal officers who are just trying to lawfully perform their duties, which has created dangerous situations threatening both these officers and the general public and Minnesotans alike. This is precisely what unfolded in Minneapolis on Saturday morning. Obstructing federal law enforcement and inciting violence against officers is wrong and illegal. This used to be a universally accepted position in the United States. Amid the hysteria, we must remember how we got here to this moment today and what this Democrat opposition is about. Former President Joe Biden and the Democrats opened America's borders for 4 years, inviting tens of millions of illegal aliens from all over the world to flood into our country. Among them, violent criminals who terrorized American communities and have inflicted devastating, permanent pain and harm on law-abiding Americans and their families. Yet we never saw outrage from Democrats or their allies in the liberal media over these horrifying crimes against U.S. citizens. The pain of American angel families was ignored and dismissed because it undermined the Democrat narrative. Innocent Americans like Jocelyn Nungray, Laken Riley, and Rachel Morin are just a few of the many victims savagely murdered by illegal alien criminals. Earlier this month, an illegal alien from Mexico with a long criminal history who came into our country under Joe Biden's administration threw a baseball-sized stone at a school bus carrying children in New Jersey and fractured the skull of an 8-year-old innocent child. President Trump promised accountability to these American families by securing the border, deporting every illegal alien who has committed crimes, especially and most importantly, violent crimes. Nearly 80 million Americans voted for him to deliver on that very promise, and he is. As the duly elected president, the president is fulfilling the will of the people by arresting and removing these threats from our country in cities from Los Angeles to New York, and yes, Minneapolis. Yet Democrat leaders in Minnesota with sanctuary city policies have actively defied federal immigration law and the will of the people. And as a result of that defiance, 2 Minnesotans have now tragically lost their lives on the streets of Tim Walz's state. It is President Trump's hope and wish and demand for the resistance and chaos to end today. That's why President Trump spoke with Governor Walz directly this morning, and he has outlined a clear and simple path to restoring law and order in Minnesota. Number 1, Governor Walz, Mayor Frey, and all Democrat leaders should turn over all criminal illegal aliens currently incarcerated in their prisons and jails to federal authorities, along with any illegal aliens with active warrants or known criminal histories for immediate deportation. Number 2, state and local law enforcement must agree to turn over all illegal aliens who are arrested by local police. And then thirdly, local police must assist federal law enforcement in apprehending and detaining illegal aliens who are wanted for crimes, especially violent crimes. If Governor Walz and Mayor Frey implement these common sense cooperative measures that I will add have already been implemented in nearly every single other state across the country, Customs and Border Patrol will not be needed to support ICE on the ground in Minnesota. ICE and local law enforcement can peacefully work together, as they are effectively doing in so many other states and jurisdictions. Additionally, President Trump is calling on the United States Congress to immediately pass legislation ending sanctuary cities once and for all. American cities should be safe sanctuaries for law-abiding citizens only, not for dangerous illegal alien criminals who broke our nation's laws and do not belong here. We hope Governor Walz will do the right thing and continue to work with President Trump to keep the American people safe following their call this morning. Americans overwhelmingly want exactly what President Trump is delivering: strong borders and strict immigration enforcement against the worst illegal aliens, of which there are still hundreds of thousands to deport from the interior of our country. The most peaceful way to carry out this vital public safety mission is for Republicans and Democrats to do it together, and for state and local law enforcement to work together with federal law enforcement. We want to let cops be cops. You wouldn't know this continues to be a very popular policy position from the biased media coverage over the course of the last few days. But polling shows huge support for this exact thing President Trump is calling for. More than 80% of Americans favor deporting illegal aliens convicted of violent crimes. A country unable to deport criminals who enter it illegally is no country at all. The open borders agenda of Kamala Harris, Tim Walz, and the Democrats was already on the ballot on November 5th, 2024, and it was resoundingly rejected. President Trump will never back down from his promise to deport violent criminal illegal aliens and make America safe again, and he welcomes all cooperation in that effort. With that, I will answer your questions. And Jordan Conradson, why don't you kick us off today? Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Caroline. Jordan Conradson, Gateway Pundit. I have a few questions. First, with respect to the shooting in Minneapolis, we're seeing massive outrage from mainstream media and the left, but I'm just wondering, where was that outrage when Ashley Babbitt, an Air Force veteran, was executed by Capitol Police Officer Michael Byrd, who she posed no threat to in the U.S. Capitol?
Well, you raise a very important point, which I also believed I just raised as well in those opening remarks, in that there has no doubt been selective outrage by the liberal biased media and picking and choosing victims and highlighting their stories. And as I've said, President Trump does not want any Americans to lose their lives in the streets of America and in American communities across the country. He believes what happened on Saturday is a tragedy, but every life is equal to President Trump, and that's why the lives of Laken Riley and Jocelyn Nungray continue to matter to him and be an utmost priority to him to this very day. And it's unfortunate that we did not see the same type of sensationalist media coverage over the tragic deaths of those innocent American women and girls across the country as we are in the wake of this tragedy that took place on Saturday. Gabe.
Caroline.
Sure, go ahead, Jordan.
I want to get your response to this. The Arizona Attorney General, just days before this shooting in Minneapolis, she seemingly encouraged rioters to go out and shoot and kill ICE agents. And I'll quote her here. She said, "If you reasonably believe your life's in danger and you're in the house or in your car or on your property, you can defend yourself with lethal force." And she said that you can't tell if ICE agents are law enforcement or imposters, and it becomes an issue of whether you reasonably believe they were law enforcement. Do you have a response to that, and does the White House believe that she should be held accountable for these remarks?
Such dangerous rhetoric, as I pointed out, is exactly what has brought us to this position today, where you have elected Democrat officials across the country who are encouraging left-wing agitators and crazy people to go out and unlawfully obstruct lawful immigration enforcement. Again, these brave men and women of ICE and Border Patrol and the federal enforcement are just trying to do their jobs to enforce our nation's immigration laws and to go after the worst of the worst in this country. I would encourage everyone in this room, and I would encourage the Arizona Attorney General to look at the video of an ICE agent in Minneapolis. He was approached by left-wing agitators who were honking their horns and were screaming slurs at him, and he rolled down his window and he said, "What are you doing? I am out here trying to catch a child predator, somebody who has convicted crimes against an innocent child, and you are trying to obstruct me from doing my job." This rhetoric against ICE, comparing them to Nazi Gestapo, Donald Trump's police force, is despicable, it is shameful, and it is precisely what has led to the escalation of tensions in Minneapolis and in other places across the country. Gabe, go ahead.
be looking into her for justifying violence?
I would defer you to the Department of Justice on that.
Thank you, Caroline.
Gabe.
Regarding Minnesota, on Saturday, the Department of Homeland Security posted that Preddy looks like he wanted to do maximum damage and massacre law enforcement. Stephen Miller on Saturday posted that, or called Preddy a would-be assassin. Why did administration officials jump to conclusions before an investigation had even been conducted?
Well, look, this has obviously been a very fluid and fast-moving situation throughout the weekend. As for President Trump, whom I speak for, he has said that he wants to let the investigation continue and let the facts lead in this case.
Well, with regards to the deployment of Tom Homan to Minneapolis, should the deployment of Mr. Homan to Minneapolis be seen as a sign that the president is dissatisfied with how the officials on the ground had handled the incident?
No, Mr. Homan is doing an exceptional job, and he has been working with Secretary Noem and President Trump over the course of the last year. Secretary Noem still has the utmost confidence and trust of the President of the United States, and she's continuing to oversee the entire Department of Homeland Security and all of the immigration enforcement that's taking place across the whole entire country. Of course, Secretary Noem is also in charge of FEMA, and we are in the wake of a brutal winter storm where hundreds of thousands of Americans have been impacted by that. So Borders-Czar Homan is in a unique position to drop everything and go to Minnesota to continue having these productive conversations with state and local officials. And I know that he's catching a plane in just a few hours to do just that at the request of the president. Jennifer.
On Saturday's shooting, has the president been briefed, and have you been briefed on specific details of the shooting? How many shots were fired? How many guns discharged? And I mean, did the protesters' gun go off, or only the officers' guns? Do you have any of those details?
Again, the investigation is continuing, Jennifer, and we will let the facts lead, and we will let the facts play out in this investigation. I do know that HSI and FBI are conducting interviews with those that were involved and the agents who were involved in this unfortunate tragedy on Saturday.
Are they keeping the president up to date on all those details?
The president is obviously very much on the ball with respect to this investigation. I think he's made that quite clear with the various statements that you've seen him put out, and also the 4 points that the president has outlined as well to Governor Walz, and to encourage him to cooperate with ICE and with the administration. Mary.
Thanks, Caroline. To follow on Gabe's question, Secretary Noem said Alex Preddy committed an act of domestic terrorism. Stephen Miller labeled Preddy a domestic terrorist. Does the president agree with them?
Look, as I've said, I have not heard the president characterize Mr. Preddy in that way. However, I have heard the president say he wants to let the facts in the investigation lead itself.
Was he alarmed to hear his top officials referring to him in that way, rushing to that judgment?
Danny, go ahead.
Thanks, Caroline. On Stephen Miller's comments, will Stephen Miller be apologising to the family of Alex Preddy for calling him, quotes, an assassin who tried to murder federal agents, despite the fact that, as you say, this is still under investigation?
Look, again, this incident remains under investigation, and nobody here at the White House, including the President of the United States, wants to see Americans hurt or killed and losing their lives in American streets. And we mourn for the parents. As a mother myself, of course, I cannot imagine the loss of life, especially losing one's child. And that same empathy from the president goes for the parents of angel families, parents of victims of illegal alien crime across our country as well. And that's exactly why the president continues to be wholeheartedly committed to deporting the worst of the worst criminals from our country. Why don't we go to the back? Kelly.
Caroline, does the president believe that the killing, though, was a mistake? Has he expressed that at all?
Again, the president has said, we have to review it, and this investigation needs to continue, and he's letting the facts on the investigation lead itself.
Does he want the body camera footage to be released to the public? Now,
that's not something I've heard the president commit to, so I won't do that from the podium. Sure.
Caroline, how serious is the administration taking allegations that local and state officials in Minnesota are actively coordinating with demonstrators through encrypted or non-encrypted communications, as well as providing government resources to impede immigration enforcement operations?
I'm sorry, Carrie, could you repeat your question?
How serious is the administration taking allegations that local and state Minnesota officials are communicating with demonstrators to basically impede immigration officials?
Well, we've definitely seen active organization amongst these left-wing groups, Carrie, and it is something that I know the FBI and the Department of Justice are looking into. Again, it is illegal to unlawfully obstruct lawful immigration enforcement in this country. And these agitators are making it nearly impossible for ICE to do their jobs and for federal law enforcement to carry out the will of the American people to deport the worst of the worst. I would just encourage everyone to please imagine in this room, all of you come to the White House every day to report on the President of the United States and the administration. You come into this briefing room, you walk through the gates of the White House. Just imagine if there were left-wing agitators or agitators of any kind who were in your face, who were doxing you, who were harassing you, who were physically threatening you, who were biting off your fingers in the case of two Border Patrol agents we saw this past weekend in Minneapolis. That would make it very difficult for you to show up and do your job here at the White House every single day. That's what these officers in Minneapolis are facing. That's why the president is calling on Governor Walz and Mayor Frey for these three very simple and common sense points of cooperation so that ICE and local law enforcement can work together. Again, we are just asking for police to be police. And if you ask any law enforcement agent or official, they want to be able to work with their federal counterparts at the state and local level and vice versa.
Caroline. Thanks a lot, Caroline. Two questions. One is looking forward. The role of Mr. Homan. Is he being sent by the president to diffuse the situation that exists right now on the ground? Is he the point person essentially for the White House in terms of trying to tamp down the tensions that exist right now in Minnesota?
Well, Mr. Homan is the point person for cooperating with state and local authorities and corresponding with them, again, to achieve this level of cooperation to subdue the chaos on the streets of Minneapolis. And I would just point out that Mr. Homan is someone who has been lauded for many, many decades for his experience working in law enforcement. In fact, this is a Washington Post headline from 9 years ago, 2016. Meet the man the White House has honored for deporting illegal immigrants. And I would remind everyone in this room that it was former President Barack Hussein Obama who awarded a medal to Mr. Homan. So he's obviously very qualified. He has the full trust and faith of the president. He will continue to have these meetings in the hopes that ICE and local law enforcement can cooperate and work together to have successful immigration enforcement, as we've seen in almost every other state across the country.
Secondly, Caroline, can you talk a little bit about tomorrow's trip by the president to Iowa, what the purpose of that trip is, and what the goals of that trip are?
Sure, yes. Tomorrow, President Trump will be traveling to Des Moines, Iowa. He will be making a local visit at a local business, and then he will be giving a speech on affordability and on the economy. And I know he very much looks forward to being there, to meeting with the great people of Iowa, but also lawmakers as well. Jake.
Caroline, a couple quick questions. First, does the president remain fully confident in Kristi Noem's ability to lead the DHS?
Yes.
And then just secondly, just on that Wall Street Journal reporting that we saw yesterday, the president said at some point that the immigration enforcement officers would leave Minneapolis. Did the Saturday killing of Alex Preddy expedite that withdrawal at all?
To your first question, the answer is yes. He still has confidence and trust in Secretary Noem. To the second question, I would point you back to what I said earlier. If Governor Walz and Mayor Frey implement these common sense cooperative measures, CBP will no longer be needed to support ICE on the ground in Minnesota. ICE and local law enforcement will peacefully work together, as they are effectively doing in so many other states and jurisdictions, to remove violent criminals from American neighborhoods across the country.
Did Walz ask the president to remove the immigration enforcement officers?
He asked the president to scale down, and the president reiterated what the president put out in his statement yesterday and what I'm sharing with all of you as well. I would just add on this level of cooperation a few statistics that I think are very important. 7 of the top 10 safest cities in the United States cooperate with ICE, and we've seen historic turnaround in safety in cities that have chosen to cooperate with ICE, that are not just led by Republicans, but also look right here in Washington, D.C. We had a great level of cooperation with Mayor Bowser and the local government, and we have been able to remove thousands of illegal aliens from the District of Columbia, where you all live, so you can thank President Trump for that. The murder rate in Washington, D.C. has plummeted as a result. There were no riots, there were no protests, nobody was tragically killed as a result of that level of cooperation between federal and local authorities. And again, that's all the president is asking for in Minnesota. It's totally common sense. Jared, go ahead.
Thank you. Caroline, in this process, you continue to describe the situation in Minneapolis as chaos. Was there any mistake made by Secretary Noem that led the president to send Mr. Holman there?
I'm sorry, I don't understand your question. Did Secretary Noem make a mistake which led to...
If she made any mistake that could lead the president to send Mr. Holman to Minneapolis?
No, as I already mentioned, Mr. Holman has been working alongside Secretary Noem and for the president over the course of the last year. And again, he's uniquely positioned to hop on a flight to Minnesota today to continue this correspondence with state and local authorities, and that's what he's going to be doing. Fran.
Caroline, is it the White House's position that Americans have the right to show up to these ICE operations and film, document, or protest the law enforcement actions?
All Americans have a First Amendment constitutional right, of course, but Americans do not have a constitutional right to impede and obstruct lawful immigration enforcement operations. That is actually a crime, and it's something that we've seen taking place in the streets of Minneapolis, which again is leading to these dangerous circumstances that these federal law enforcement officers have been forced to work within.
And with respect to the call with Governor Walz this morning, the president described it as respectful. He said, we seem to be on a similar wavelength, but you had strong criticism for the governor and the Minneapolis mayor, Jacob Frey, just now. So could you explain the difference in tone between what the president had said in his True Social post and I think some of the criticisms that you just levied from the podium?
Fran, I think the criticisms that I laid out, I'm painting the picture for all of you in this room, are what led to the moment that we are in today, where Governor Walz and President Trump are having a conversation, a constructive and productive conversation to end the chaos and the lawlessness that has taken place in Governor Walz's state.
Caroline.
Elena.
Thank you. I had a question. With Holman now going to Minnesota, is Gregory Bovino also going to remain in Minnesota overseeing these ICE operations?
Mr. Bovino is a wonderful man, and he's a great professional. He is going to very much continue to lead Customs and Border Patrol throughout and across the country. Mr. Holman will be the main point of contact on the ground in Minneapolis.
And to follow up, given what we've heard from several Trump administration officials, people like Stephen Miller, as people point out, calling him a domestic terrorist, but saying that Preddy was out to massacre law enforcement. Why not require ICE agents to wear body cameras to clear up some of the disputes that we are hearing from witnesses and video footage versus what the administration has been saying?
Well, that's a policy question that I know the policy folks in the building are having with members on Capitol Hill, and I'll leave it to them and the president to make that decision.
And I just my final question is on, you were talking about the level of cooperation that the president talked about with Governor Walz. Will the administration commit to cooperating with local officials on this investigation into Alex Preddy?
The president spoke about this with Governor Walz and said he would have a discussion about it. He did not make a commitment, and so therefore I won't make that commitment here. I would just remind all of you in the media, because I've seen a lack of reporting on this fact, there are investigations into what took place on Saturday. The Homeland Security investigations and the FBI have teamed up for an investigation, and there's also an internal CBP investigation, an internal review of what is happening on the ground in Minnesota. The president supports those investigations, and as I've said repeatedly, he wants to see them move forward. Phil.
Caroline, FBI Director Kash Patel said in a Sunday interview, quote, "You cannot bring a firearm loaded with multiple magazines to any sort of protest." Does the president believe the Second Amendment rights remain in effect even when protesting?
The president supports the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding American citizens, absolutely. There has been no greater supporter or defender of the right to bear arms than President Donald J. Trump. So while Americans have a constitutional right to bear arms, Americans do not have a constitutional right to impede lawful immigration enforcement operations. And any gun owner knows that when you are carrying a weapon, when you are bearing arms, and you are confronted by law enforcement, you are raising the assumption of risk and the risk of force being used against you. And again, that's unfortunately what took place on Saturday.
Caroline is in Minneapolis. Will his mission continue to be be focusing on illegal immigrants with a criminal history, or will it be on illegal immigration generally?
Mr. Holman will continue to enforce our nation's immigration laws, especially deporting the worst of the worst criminals in Minnesota who have committed violent offenses. And I would just remind all of you that this important work is continuing to be carried out. In just the last few days, I'm happy to provide this packet to anyone in the room. ICE has arrested multiple violent criminals, illegal aliens within Minnesota. Many of them have convictions for assault, driving under the influence, fraud. This individual here I'm looking at was an aggravated felon with multiple convictions for larceny, fraud, and forgery of checks, vehicle theft, drug possession, domestic assault, inflicting bodily harm on another, criminal convictions of larceny, identity theft, again, charged with driving under the influence. These are extremely dangerous people who Governor Walz and Mayor Frey have allowed to roam on their streets, and all the president is asking for is cooperation to arrest individuals like this and deport them from the United States of America. I'll take a couple more. Go ahead.
Okay, so this weekend the president posted that this is a cover-up of the fraud in the state of Minnesota. He also posted Minnesota is a cover-up. These both happened after the shooting. So given that these came after the shooting, what is the this here? What is the cover-up he's alleging?
Yes, it's a good question. I've spoken with the president about this at length. What the president is referring to is the fact that you have Governor Walz and, again, the mayor, who have been encouraging these left-wing agitators to come out and to harass and to dox and to threaten ICE and to make this conversation about and smear lies about federal law enforcement who, again, are just trying to do their jobs in an attempt to distract from the widespread, massive fraud that has taken place in their state. Billions and billions of dollars has been stolen from law-abiding taxpayers in Minnesota, and the administration continues to be very focused on getting to the bottom of it, and especially, and the president raised a good question over the weekend, with respect to Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, who now has a net worth within the millions, and one must ask themselves why and how is that possible? Is she connected to the fraud rings that we have seen taking place within her state and her own district? It's a question the American people are raising, and the president believes it's one worth answering. Haley.
Thanks, Caroline. I want to go back to some of the comments from Stephen Miller and Secretary No. You've made clear the president wants to see the investigation play out. When answering some of the questions on the specific details, is he concerned that some of those definitive statements made by other officials risks public perception of the credibility of those investigations now playing out?
Again, the president believes that these investigations are credible, they are continuing, they are active, and he wants to let them play out. Alex.
Caroline, thank you. Is the administration willing to separate DHS funding from other funding bills in order to avoid a broader shutdown?
Look, at this point, the White House supports the bipartisan work that was done to advance the bipartisan appropriations package, and we want to see that passed. Policy discussions on immigration in Minnesota are happening. Look, the president is leading those discussions, as evidenced by his correspondence with Governor Walz this morning, but that should not be at the expense of government funding for the American people, which would include, as you know, Alex, FEMA funding, and we are in the midst of the storm that took place over the weekend, and many Americans are still being impacted by that. So we absolutely do not want to see that funding lapse, and we want the Senate to move forward with passing the bipartisan appropriations package that was negotiated on a bipartisan basis.
And secondly, there's another round of Russia-Ukraine talks this weekend, Sunday. If you can walk us through with the president, how he would be involved in that, if at all. We'll be talking to President Putin, President Zelensky ahead of those meetings.
I'm not tracking any scheduled calls at this point in time. However, the president remains deeply involved, and of course he's being apprised by his advisors, namely Jared Kushner and Special Envoy Witkoff, on these talks. They had a multilateral meeting this past weekend, which didn't get a ton of coverage, but that was historic in nature, where the president's team has really brought two sides of this war to the table together to move the ball closer towards peace. So the president is not giving up on the peace process. He obviously just met with President Zelensky when we were in Davos, Switzerland, but I'm not tracking any calls scheduled for this week. On one more foreign policy point, I will point out, as you all saw, the last remaining body of the hostages, Israeli hostages in Gaza, has been returned. This is a huge foreign policy feat for the President of the United States, for the State of Israel, and frankly for the whole world. The President made the impossible possible, and so it's great news for the President, for the United States, for our allies and also for peace in the Middle East. And I understand that more than 20 new additional countries have also signed up to join the newly established Board of Peace with respect to the rebuilding of Gaza, which is another historic accomplishment for this president. So thank you all very much, and we'll see you in Iowa tomorrow.
So there's a lot there. I've got plenty of thoughts on that, but to the end, what she said there at the end, which is getting zilch on press coverage. What an amazing feat that the last of the hostages from the October 7th attacks has finally been returned back to Israel. The remains of the final hostage, something that a lot of people probably didn't even think was going to happen. And then you've got multiple other countries that have signed on to the Board of Peace to help rebuild Gaza. Got to remember that the big story, which is the protesters, these are the same people that have been protesting against the government because they say that we have been, poorly treating the people of Gaza, the Palestinians, and we're just in the business of blowing it up, and the opposite things happen. But again, that's going to get zilch on press coverage because of this other story. Here's my quick thoughts, and then I'll hit a break. Caroline Leavitt had that was probably one of her more difficult press conferences that she's had to hold, but only for a couple of reasons. First of all, she's right on all those fronts. This really starts and stops with the impeding of law enforcement. There's no way to argue around that. Impeding law enforcement action. Everybody knows that. Everybody that has interactions with police, even criminals that have interactions with police. I watch a lot of cops, right? And on all these guys that end up getting stopped or pulled over by police that ultimately end up running, they always run after weighing the consequences in their head. They do a quick equation and they say to themselves, well, I'm wanted. I've got a warrant. If they get me, then I'm going to go to jail. So I'm going to run and at least try to get away. But they also understand that something bad could happen and they could get severely hurt, if not killed, if they run. Even the criminals know this, okay? They play that equation out in their head and then they decide to run in a matter of a split second, right? Every time. And that's what you have here. You had somebody that decided, whether it be because of political propaganda or whatever has gotten this guy to the point, an ICU nurse at the VA, a guy that's probably highly respected in his profession, likely has a good life, he's got a good job, a guy that could be doing a million other things, decided to take to the streets of Minneapolis with his firearm, which is his right. And honestly, you wouldn't catch me dead in Minneapolis without a firearm with the way that Ish-Hole has turned out. But decided that he was going to interact with law enforcement, which already had a lot of problems, a lot of issues on their hands. He ends up ultimately getting in a tussle based on resisting arrest, and then tragedy happens. He made that decision. But why that was difficult for Caroline Leavitt, before I go to break, is because of comments that were made by Steve Miller, and I don't know who else made the comments, but they said something about this guy intending to cause damage or to kill ICE officers because he had a firearm and 2 loaded mags. I don't know that that's true, but I don't know that it's not true. We're likely not going to know what his intentions were. But no matter the intentions, he made, like so many people across the world every single day, made a decision that turned out to be a bad decision that cost him his life. As tragic as it is, this happened because of the interaction. If we could do it all over, his family, himself, probably wouldn't do it. Probably wouldn't do the same thing again. But yet, here we are. Lots to talk about on that front. 205-545-9950 and your calls. Hang tight. All right, a couple from the text line. Patrick says, you know, the thing I don't get, if he loved people as much as his family said he did, how can you not love yourself enough to understand and know better the things that he did? Because first of all, you never ever, you never end up in a confrontation with any cop holding a gun or carrying a gun or at all. You just don't do that. It's common sense. You shouldn't be doing it at all. But carrying a gun or even a knife for that matter and starting a fight with officers is going to end bad more than likely. And just, you know, for clarification, he didn't start a fight with officers, but he was likely hostile in whatever he was saying initially to officers. And then, again, impeding the law enforcement activities as they attempted to take down this woman that was off to the side. Clarissa also says, aren't the protesters in Minnesota guilty of what they accuse Trump of with January 6th, instigating violence and attacking law and order? I'm so confused how the left is playing both sides, because they always play both sides. They're all law and order and anti-police getting attacked on January 6th, but now they're all for it. Dox them, get their families threatened, put them in danger. It's a totally different story now. And then at one point that was made there at the beginning, Ashley Babbitt. If we want to talk about Ashley Babbitt and the comparisons between the two, Ashley Babbitt was unarmed. And she was much further away from Michael Byrd, who shot and killed her, than this guy was. I'll talk a lot about that when we get back. Hang tight.